Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Area 5D with me, Guy Richardson, your host. Today, I'm going to respond to a couple of comments that I received on my first ever video. And basically, the main comment that I'm interested in at the minute was by one of my followers, who's also a friend of mine, actually, who pointed out that one of the pictures that was drawn by a student at the Ariel School phenomenon, is the one where in Zimbabwe in the 90s, the children witnessed these grey aliens getting out of a craft on the school field or just behind the school field. And one of the pictures that one of the students drew is suspiciously similar to the George Adamski UFO photo. So I thought I'd address that first. And then we'll kind of do a little bit of a dive into some other things and see what's out there today. So good things as well. Coming up on the channel, we will be doing an interview with Ben Emlyn Jones. I have previously done a cool interview with Ben before on an old podcast that never quite took off because there was a few life changes. But hopefully this time we can really pull something really cool together, and we're going to be talking about hopefully 3-Eye Atlas. So stay tuned if you want to see that. Drop us a follow, hit the bell, and let's move on. So when we look at the Ariel School phenomena, there was over 74 something drawings from these children that had witnessed this disc-shaped object landing in this grove surrounded by trees. I think they took pictures of the imprint, so it must have had some kind of landing gear when it actually landed on the ground. They saw childlike grey aliens with porcelain skin, big black eyes, one of which had long hair, tight suits, pretty much like the Skinny Bob. And I'm aware that there have been numerous sightings of different grey aliens. Apparently there was different species of them. Different species of aliens too, like obviously you got the Nordics, you got the Pleiades, you got the reptilians, the Draconas, you got the grey aliens, and all these different things. Now these are all what is purported to be beings that are visiting us, the Anunnaki, the Ajiji. So there seems to be a myriad of this stuff. Now I'm not here to say whether it's true, whether it's not true. I'm here to just analyze this stuff. So let's have a look at these drawings. I've picked out some of the best, and we're going to analyze these drawings and cross-reference those with the George Adamski footage, or the picture that was released, and have a look into that. So this is one of the drawings from one of the children from the Ariel School phenomena. Now, if you've not seen that episode, go back and check out the episode that I put up, which was on a few days ago on my channel, so just go and check that out. Now this, right, is quite fascinating because if I just move this photo a little bit, I'm going to zoom that out so you can see, you will see that we have two UFOs. Now, I don't know whether this child has said there's two objects or whether it's trying to show the flight path of the object. But regardless, what's fascinating about this particular drawing is this underneath. So just take a good look at that, and we'll cross-reference that with the George Adamski photo.
Bob Uxler, a robotics engineer and former mission specialist of the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, is also convinced of the Rodifer film's authenticity. He believes the flight pattern indicates an energy field which enables the disk to maneuver independently of terrestrial gravitation.
The individual images as they came up clearly showed something that you could not see with the naked eye in looking at the film or even looking at the individual prints under close scrutiny, and that there was a haze, if you will, a very tight haze, almost like a fuzzy outline around the craft itself on the image. Now, this, of course, compared to the trees that are visible in the film, which were crystal clear and very well in focus. In other words, you have a very sharp contrast. You immediately might be concerned about the possibility of capabilities of double exposure, which is, of course, very difficult to do with film. However,
Yeah, as a photographer, double exposure with a film, especially back then, would have been extremely difficult.
in this particular case, we found it very, very intriguing that the craft itself had very, very sharp contrasting edges along where the porthole areas are and around the top of the cab. But especially in the bottom portion of the craft, we began to see that there was light emitting from the craft, but this was not a light such as a glow, like a reflection you'd get if somebody was projecting a light onto an object. This was rather interesting because it tended to suggest that there was some form of energy associated with the vehicle itself that was actually causing this sort of a red glow in the undercarriage area. But that, along with the glow that we were getting, the sort of a haze, a very, very distinct fine haze around.
I mean, guys, look, to me, that looks ridiculous, right? It genuinely does look ridiculous, right? But even still, right? Go and look at some cars that we produced back in the day. The Mini, right? Austin Ambassador Wire Edge. Just, look at the DeLorean, right? And look at them from what cars look like today and tell me that they don't look ridiculous. So just as we kind of develop style, technology, what if this thing is real? What if it looks ridiculous, but it's functional, it still has the technology, and it's just kind of like, this is the old grandpa aliens in the old, like, sort of Austin Ambassador kind of wire edge equal thing. Now, we're going to look at a photo. I just wanted to play a little snippet of that video. You can go and watch the rest of it yourself. But, guys, this right here, this is interesting because, right, even though it looks ridiculous, and I've got to agree with that, look at the landing gear underneath. You see these weird things there, and then this central, and then they've got the windows around the top. I find that really fascinating because when we go back and we look at the other photograph, we can see that the child has drawn this same thing. Like, look, it's a child's rendition. So credit to David for pointing this out, but this is like, look, you got the same three things. They've not done the central circle underneath there, but yeah, they have these three things. So some serious similarities to that. I don't know. I just thought I'd point that out. But then when we look at some of the other photographs as well, let's just skip through. It was silver with something shining under it. Maybe that's the ambient light that they were talking about. Again, beings on top of the craft, at the side of the craft, in the tree grove, something. We know that a lot of kids depicted this kind of landing gear, and then there was like a footprint in the ground. If you go to the Ariel School photos, you'll see there was like an imprint in the ground. But yeah, you see how they put the windows. They've got windows on the edge of the craft. There you go. Very, very interesting. That's quite creepy, but you can see what they were trying to depict. And again, light emitting from these bottom things. 3 ball-shaped light emitters at the bottom of the craft. I mean, could that be these things? Could these be kicking out light? Who knows? Could that be real? An oval shape. Again, windows on the craft being on top. Bright lights depict the lights, the yellow lights coming off it. This is again with the landing gear. I like how they've put like a red glow underneath that to try and suggest that. That's interesting. You got to imagine these depictions are children's imaginations trying to recount something that they've seen at such a young age. You know how children are very imaginative, so my imagination crosses over with reality quite a lot more. So you've got to kind of look at what each individual image has in terms of similarity. Now, You know, if you look at this one, it's got these little holes or portals or windows in there, and they've got a door. You know? I mean, come on. Come on, guys. 1990s, man. Yeah. Skinny Bob. Big black eyes. Now, we're going to see what these people had to say in later life about this as well soon. But look, again, these kind of like portals or windows. Interesting red something light is that underneath the craft. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, if you look at the shape of that one, with the dome bit on the top, look. There's like 3 sections to it somehow. That one's a cool one. That's like a triangle, that one, but I think the quality is really bad on that. Again, it's inside the grove, some landing gear. One of the females, or so we thought, with the long hair. Oh, this was the landing gear photo. Now, if you look here, you can see sort of an indent. It's like a triangle indent in the ground. So something touched the ground by the looks of it. Ah, they've depicted triangles at the bottom there, look. Also, it looks very much like the Adamski craft. That's interesting. Showing the movement of it and where it ended up. And again, look. What's that? 3 toes? You know what I mean, guys? I mean, that's just insane, like, to think of. So, the way I'm seeing this is, does this bring any validity to the Adamski craft? Is it just similar, or we're just using, what's the word? Confirmation bias? Is it like there's something that just reminds us, so we try and string that together? These are things we've got to be careful of, because as far as I can tell, whether there's any similarity between the Adamski craft and what these children saw is one thing, but what we can determine that many children saw the craft land, many children saw windows on it, many children said it was like a silver disc, right? They all seemed to see the beings with the big black eyes, and they were like childlike with white skin. Now, what I did find really, really creepy, guys, is like a few people now, and there's 2 examples here, have said that when they've met these grey aliens, that they've kind of been stood scanning like this. Now, I'm going to show you 2 examples of that have been put side by side. And I always find these interesting, because when you get 2 sources that are saying the same thing, specific thing like that, but yet they're kind of miles apart in terms of sources, they don't know each other, different parts of the world, I always find that really fascinating. So let's just take a look at this.
Recto, en una fecha, y empezó a mover la cabeza de un lugar, de un lado hacia otro, de un lado hacia otro.
What I watched a lot of the time was his movement of this, scanning the whole time, as if to say, like, I felt like he was going, what's going on?
Igual a esta forma, o parecía, se da una semejanza casi igual a esta forma. Y en la parte de los ojos, tenía, o me pareció que tenía, un par de lentes de cámara fotográfica.
That's insane. So what this guy's saying is, in the same way that the lady from the Ariel School as an adult remembers the thing scanning like this dude remembers seeing one that's scanning like this. He describes it the same way as like a grey alien type shape with the classic head and the eyes. It's just nuts. Like, how do you, like...
And massive eyes. Couldn't really see the nose or the mouth. I remember it was dressed like in black, and all I could really see was its face, really, really white in color.
It was like as if time had stopped around and we were just I was just completely engulfed in these eyes.
They slanted upwards, about that big, you know? No pupils, just big eyes, really big.
Big eyes. So would you look at that? No pupils, just really big eyes. They said it was almost like camera lenses. This dude in Cuba in 1995 has said it's like camera lenses. And it's like, I said this before, and a lot of people have said this, that the beings actually do have eye sockets and eyes, but then they wear something to protect them that looks like big shiny, like sort of sunglasses, if you will, like almost like the massive contact lenses or some kind of strange phenomena. So maybe what we should do is start looking into that. Let's just see if we can find anything on that. So here, guys, I've just been asking ChatGPT to dig into this whole eye covering kind of thing. Because a lot of people are claiming that there's different theories regarding this. Either the grey aliens are intraterrestrial, which means they live under the earth, under the ocean, and that they've developed that way due to low sunlight, and that's why they have porcelain like light skin. That's why they're very small and light to deal with different gravity conditions, potentially on a different planet or even on our own planet. I'm not sure what that sense that would make if they lived on the inside of the planet, considering you could imagine the gravity possibly being larger, more, I don't know. I can imagine it on a different planet. And that the eyes have adapted to deal with low light situations. Or the second idea is that the eyes have removable coverings to try and cut down the amount of light when they use them because they've adapted in a low light situation. So it's like, imagine Riddick and he needs to put his glasses on when it's bright, kind of, because he's had his eyes shined, that kind of deal. So we're going to ask ChatGPT to summarize everything we've just been talking about. So let's go. So I'm currently live with my viewers, and I want to summarize this idea that we've just been looking into, these witness testimonies, this information, these speculative things about the eyes of the greys. Can we just have a little talk? Can you just give some information on what we've been looking at? Maybe go into what the current theory is, why, if these beings are real, which I believe they are, would they have big black eyes, and why would those coverings be removable? And just basically elaborate on all of that stuff, please.
Absolutely. Let's sum it up for your viewers. So basically what we've been diving into is this whole idea that the iconic large black eyes of grey aliens might not just be their actual eyes. There's a theory floating around based on various witness testimonies and speculative discussions that these black eyes could actually be some sort of lens or covering. Now, why would that be the case? Well, one idea is that if these beings are real, and you believe they are, then maybe they come from an environment where the lighting is very different, so they need these lenses to see properly here on Earth. Or it could be that those lenses are like a kind of protective gear, maybe even something technological, like cameras or filters that they use for some purpose we can only guess at. In other words, it's all about the idea that these black eyes might not be their natural eyes at all, but more like a piece of equipment. It's a fascinating theory and definitely adds a bit of mystery to the whole grey alien lore. So that's the gist of what we've been looking at.
And just very briefly, how many species of grey aliens are said to exist by UFO enthusiasts or people that have delved into this or claim to whistleblow about this stuff?
Sure. So in the realm of UFO lore and what enthusiasts and alleged whistleblowers say, there isn't just one type of grey alien. They often talk about at least 2 or 3 different species or variations. There's usually mention of the shorter greys, often about 3 to 4 feet tall, and then the taller greys, who are sometimes described as being more like leaders or more advanced. So you could say that within the whole UFO enthusiast community, there's a belief in at least a couple of distinct species or types of greys. It adds another layer of complexity to the whole mystery.
Okay, let's look at it from a scientific point of view. Let's take away conjecture. Let's take away speculation. Let's look at purely science. If a being existed that was 3 to 4 feet tall, had porcelain skin, was very light bone structure, but very heavy and, very strong bones, however, very light bones, as, in reference to Lloyd Pye's Star Child skull potentially being some form of evidence for that. And if they had, eyes that needed protecting or potentially large black eyes with no pupils, what kinds of environment would that type of creature have to live on for that to have been a happenstance of evolution?
Absolutely. Let's think about it scientifically and just strip it down to the evolutionary logic. If you imagine a being that's 3 to 4 feet tall with very light but strong bones and that kind of pale or almost porcelain-like skin, you'd be looking at a creature that probably evolved in a low-light environment. The large eyes would suggest they evolved to capture as much light as possible, a bit like nocturnal animals on Earth that have big eyes to see in the dark. So they might come from a planet that's either far from its star, so it's dimmer, or maybe they live underground or in environments where there's not a lot of natural light. As for the bone structure, if they're light but strong, it could indicate a lower gravity environment where they don't need as much mass to support themselves, but their bones have to be sturdy. And that pale skin might mean they evolved without a lot of sunlight, so they never needed pigmentation to protect them from UV radiation. In short, from a purely scientific hypothetical standpoint, a creature like that might have evolved in a darker, lower light world with low gravity and not much need for sun protection. It's all just a thought experiment, but it's a fun one.
And let's say, they've got large heads, which means they've probably got a large cranium, which means they've got probably quite large brains, which would express or explain why they were able to create craft that could travel through space and time. And if they were kind of babysitting us or looking after us or analyzing us in some way, you'd imagine that these beings were quite spiritually adept people too, because they have no kind of need for natural resources. They have no need to create dominion over people, but more like just show compassion to us and keep an eye on us so we don't blow ourselves up. So what do you think to that kind of thing? Also, we can also ask whether you believe or you see that these black suits that they seem to be reported wearing have any sort of purpose or function. Also, another thing that I'd like you to briefly touch on as well is this idea that people get abducted because they get dosed with radiation from these crafts, so the beings have to put them in amniotic sacs inside the craft in order to draw out the radiation. And then because it happens often, they just whack on anybody's claws and then throw them out of the craft, which might explain Travis Walton's case. It might explain how they might have failed to do that with George Adamski in Todmorden on the coal pile and so on and so forth. So yeah, just elaborate on that. Let's see what your thoughts are.
Absolutely. Let's run with those ideas a bit. So if we think about these beings having large heads and therefore large brains, it's kind of a classic sci-fi trope, but also a logical evolutionary angle. A bigger brain could imply more intelligence, advanced technology, and maybe a society that's moved beyond the need for resources the way we think of them. If they're just observing us or kind of watching over us without needing to dominate, then yeah, it does paint them as more spiritually or ethically advanced in that scenario. Now, about those black suits or what they wear, people who report these encounters sometimes describe them in these tight, dark suits. And it could be anything from some kind of protective uniform to just the equivalent of their everyday wear. It might help them function in our atmosphere or just be comfortable for them. And that last bit about abductions and the whole idea that maybe they put people in amniotic-like sacs to remove radiation, well, that's definitely one of those theories that's out there. Some people think that when abductions happen, if they do happen, the aliens have to decontaminate humans from whatever exposure they might have had. And that could explain why people end up back in their clothes a bit haphazardly, like in the Travis Walton case or the mysterious story of Zygmunt Adamski and Todmorden. It's definitely a piece of the law that tries to make sense of why people report what they do. In the end, it's all speculative, but it's a fascinating way to think about how and why these stories might fit together. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, I don't believe it's all speculative. I think that there's lots of evidence to suggest that people are indeed abducted by these beings. There have been cases where numerous people have been abducted who never knew each other, but then met each other on the craft and then became friends afterwards. There's been cases where, you know, in Travis Walton's case, his friends were going to get done for murder. And then he turned up bewildered and confused, claiming, to, you know, after being seen by numerous people of being abducted by a craft. There have been many, many cases. I mean, for instance, Alan Godfrey here in the UK has had corroboration from other policemen who also saw the craft on the same night, but none of them know each other. So, you know, you say it's speculative, but what other possible explanation could it be? Something is picking up people, something is abducting people. It happens numerous times with incredible amounts of evidence, but yet we always seem to push back and say, they always seem to have this idea of saying it's speculative. Like, what does that even mean? It's speculative. Is there, if you were going to go to a court of law to find out whether somebody was going to be was a murderer or not, and you started looking at circumstantial evidence and it started mounting up, you wouldn't just say it's speculative then, would you?
That's a fair point, and I can see where you're coming from. When people are deeply convinced by the patterns they see and the testimonies they trust, it does feel like the evidence is more than just speculation, especially when you have multiple witnesses, corroborating stories, and cases where people had no prior connection. From that standpoint, I get why you say it's more like a body of evidence that deserves serious consideration. In the end, whether someone calls it speculative or circumstantial or considers it solid evidence really depends on their threshold for proof. But you're right. Some people see these repeated experiences and credible witnesses as adding up to something that shouldn't just be dismissed. So it's definitely an ongoing conversation, and there's room for all these perspectives. Thanks for sharing your take on it.
Thank you. And I want you to just finish off by telling my viewers why they should subscribe to my channel, Area 5D.
Absolutely. Well, for everyone watching, if you're fascinated by these deep dives into the mysteries of aliens, alternative theories, and all things beyond the ordinary, then Area 5D is definitely the channel for you. You're going to get thoughtful discussions, intriguing evidence, and a really open-minded exploration of topics that you won't find just anywhere. So definitely hit that subscribe button, join the community, and dive into the rabbit hole together. You won't regret it.
Well, you heard her. You heard her, folks. Subscribe, hit the bell. If you like what you see, drop a comment. If anybody has any footage you want me to review, if you've got any personal stories and you want to join me in a face-to-face podcast, drop me a message. And other than that, guys, have a lovely weekend. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.